Abuja, you are listening to 93.7 Citizen FM, the latest radio station based in Nigeria's capital. Our station seeks to broadcast a broad mix of culture and views with priority given to development programming to enable residents.
Welcome back. This is still Citizen FM 93.7, and you are listening to the Super Citizen at Sunrise. The time is 8:08. Today is the 22nd of November 2022. Yes, the end of the year is coming. So if you haven't achieved for yourself all of those things that you set out to, maybe in your list of New Year's resolutions, well, you have a few more days in order to do that. There is still hope. It is still possible. And if you just want to coast to the end of the year, that is certainly fine too. But whatever you do, make sure that you apply yourself to the best of your abilities. And please, for those who are in traffic, drive safely and follow the traffic rules. Earlier on in the day, I'd mentioned that, the biggest cause of road accidents is fast driving, speed. So let's try as much as possible not to speed. Well, it's time for our Super Citizen at Sunrise Big Talk. And this is when we pick one subject matter and break it down. And today we're talking about insecurity, which is not a new thing for Nigeria. We know of all the challenges that we've been facing over the past few years. Maybe we have not been at the best of our game, but we can always change that. Tomorrow is always an opportunity. But here's what's been happening. The National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana Monguno, last week said that Nigeria cannot surmount the current security challenges without legislative support. So he's asking for the support of the National Assembly. Now, this is something he said when he appeared before the House of Representatives Committee on National Security and Intelligence for his agency's budget defense. Now, the chairman of the House Committee on National Security and Intelligence, Shaban Ibrahim Sharada, said that the total budget for the intelligence community was slightly reduced from the, nearly 213 billion naira of last year to 195 billion naira for 2023. Now, Monguno described intelligence as a driver for driving challenging all of the security problems that we have in the country. He said, and I quote, "I must also say that the type of insecurity that confronts us is not peculiar to Nigeria, but it's a global thing. In today's context, we can only overcome this problem when we recognize the importance of intelligence as being the driver, the propellant of all activities and the whole society's approach." Also, he's worried by the insecurity challenges in the country, but we have other people who are too. The Deputy Controller General of Nigerian Immigration Service, Dr. Emmanuel Ifadi, he has asked the government at all levels and the private sector to invest more on defense programs for citizens. So today on the program, we want to take a look at Nigeria's security challenges and want to seek and find out how much support security agencies are getting when it comes to dealing with insecurity in Nigeria. Critical questions. Have they gotten the adequate legislative support where the issue of funding for the security agencies are concerned? And beyond funding, what manner of extra support is required to ensure security agencies deliver on the task of effectively securing the country in the midst of recent warnings or alarms that were raised over the safety in certain parts of the country? So I still have Dr. Akinreti here with us. Doctor, thank you very much for staying for this discussion.
Thank you.
We also have on the line retired Captain Okai Aigbe. He's a security and intelligence expert. Captain, it's a pleasure to have you on the program.
It's my pleasure as well to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, Captain, let me start with you. There's been so much talk about intelligence and its importance in Nigeria. How, as an expert, just tell us how critical is intelligence gathering and also the use of whatever it is that has been accumulated or secured by intelligence agencies?
Well, okay, I'm going to react from a rather biased point of view in the sense that that's the community that I'm coming from. So basically, I always try to think around intelligence-driven operations. And I think that there's a lot of advantage to that, first of all, because it helps you to plan. You know, you kind of have an idea of what you're going up against. It helps you to optimize your resources, because one of the things that terrorist organizations or similar organizations do is to get you to stretch your resources. You know, you're all over the place. You're chasing them all over the place. And in doing that, you're extending your resources. So intelligence helps you to kind of pinpoint areas that you should be able to go out and take out the adversary. And it gives that level of confidence as well. So as much as possible, you're not falling into ambushes, because, you know, we've seen this happen several times where some of our troops have been ambushed because they're not aware that, you know, some of these organizations have infiltrated a certain area.
So when we say intelligence, what are we talking about? I mean, it must be massive.
Well, the fact is, intelligence is, you could define it as actionable information. So it's information that has been collected and processed to a point that, you know, it's credible, you know, and that's what's important. But, you know, this is a process that is cyclic. You know, you have to continue to go and verify, authenticate, because intelligence is only as good as it is now. Because as you get it, things are changing. You know, the situation is usually fluid, it's dynamic. You have intelligence that somebody was seen at a point. At the time that you're getting the intelligence, that individual may have moved. The intention may have changed. So that's why we talk about dissemination and how rapidly you must be able to provide that information to those that will act on it in time. It must be timely. If it's not timely, then the aim is usually defeated.
And okay, on the one part, there is what you can secure from the local community. But what part does technology, research, development have to play in intelligence gathering?
Well, in the current dispensation, you know, with the internet and all of the technologies like drones and the rest of them, satellite technology that we have, there's a huge role that they can play. However, you know, one of the key principles in intelligence is corroboration. You know, you need to be able to authenticate what you get from one source and try to corroborate that with another source, you know. But sometimes the thing about technology, it's kind of agnostic. It gives you information, but you still have to, in most cases, analyze that information to see what that information means, how relevant it is to your operations. So this is one of the challenges as well, because, you know, because of technology, you can gather so much information, but, you know, in terms of being able to assess and analyze this information also means that there's so much more to work through. Now, with big data also comes, you know, processing power, which is what we have, a larger processing power now. So it also means that, we have to invest a lot more in technology to be able to get the analytical side of things done. But be that as it may, it's always going to come down to some individual or group of individuals actually putting this down in black and white before they send that out to people that are going to act on that intelligence.
Well, you talked about actionable information. What does that mean for information to be actionable?
It means that it's credible, and there are two ways of arriving at this. First of all, you want to look at the source. How credible is the source? Is this source a source that you've tested in the past? Have they proven that they're reliable? And then you want to look at the information itself. How accurate is it? Does it fit in with other things that you have? Is it completely, out of whack? Is it totally different from what you'd have expected? So there's a way that you grade both of these, and you want to be able to aggregate and arrive at figures that give you that validates that piece of intelligence, and that's the point that it becomes actionable. But like I've said, intelligence is a cycle. You always have to keep on revalidating the intelligence that you have, or else it changes. And what happens is that you expend resources. You're sending, your troops to a certain location, and there's nobody there. So that's a waste of time. It's a waste of fuel, and it's time consuming, even on the troops themselves, because troops' morale is very, very important in the whole equation.
Okay, well, I want to come to Dr. Akinreti to talk about this. Yeah. Looking at these budgets. 2022, we had 212 billion, and then another 700 million on top of that. 2023, we had 195 million and 18 billion, 195 billion, and then 18 million on top of that. So there has been, according to this report, a slight reduction, but it's not so slight. And I will contextualize that. 2022, the dollar was probably at about 4 to 500. Right now, the dollar is about 720. So if you put it in that context, this drop from 212 billion to 195 billion is actually quite huge.
Yeah, it's really huge because we need to understand that we must support, the armed forces and security agencies. I belong to a media group in which, our slogan is prayer and support for the armed forces and security agencies. And we're quite appropriate, in our slogan and then in our charge, because there's nothing is too small to preserve your life. We need to understand that when something happens to you, if they have to bring so and so amount of money, you will, because you just want to survive.
So, including it explains why a lot of people pay ransoms for kidnapping. They just want to survive.
That is it. So if we say we are going to, we need money for to support the security agencies, and then we just think that it's a matter of mathematics. 1 plus 2 is 1 plus 1 is equal to 2, but it doesn't work that way, because look at most of the equipment you are going to buy are duralized, and most of this equipment you can't just pick them immediately up from the shelf. You have to also place order for them, and if you're not careful, you don't do that placement, you don't order it on time, the somehow vagaries of the dynamics of international monetary distance could also affect it. We need to put that in consideration. More importantly is even the morale of the boots on the ground. So we have to pay adequate attention to this. Yes, we want to get more men or more boots on the ground, fine. Even those that are there now, to what extent are we giving them support? To what extent are we making life much more better for them? These are the things. These are the things I think should continue in that budget. Because you see, media. We do. I talk to my colleagues. We just look at the superficial, the numbers. But what are the facts? Behind the figures. We need to interrogate that, and we can even to even ask more, to tell them, no, this does not work. Look, at times when we say we send troops, out there to go and fight, there are certain things drone can do. You can send drone to anywhere, to get the target. You can even send drone to go and access intelligence for you. You bring it back for you, then you do the analysis something, then you can act on that. So if you are going to invest in technology, it's not cheap. So if you look at that budget that's coming out, I said, let us, because we want to show that we are doing oversight functions. We are this so and so. We are controlling this. We are checking this. Are you checking it correctly? Are you sure what you are doing will not undermine the success of the troops or the security agencies? I mean, when you look at some of even the equipment that our security agencies are, so at times you laugh. But when you see those that are having advanced countries, you say, why is it disparity? Because they know that it is important for them. That's why they don't discuss even their budget vision. They don't discuss. It's not made open. And certain things they have to do covertly, for the security agencies abroad. We are not doing that. So a little thing like this, we just expose it. We just talk about it. If we talk about this, we're also undermining the security architecture.
So certainly,
we need to understand some of this passage very, very well. That is about survival, and it's about survival. You have to push everything into it. What is important for us is to monitor how well are these resources, are these funds being utilized. That is what is important for me. That is, I think, what is important. And that is what our own media group is talking about. That look. Yes, we let us provide all the support that is needed. Let us now see how we are also going to assist them to achieve the success for the money we have put down. This is very, very, very important. So if intelligence is going to be actionable, so how correct is going to be actionable? We have to push for that. And where you are going to use human beings, human resources to do that, you also need that. You need to motivate them. You need to boost their morale. So where you also need to invest in technology to assist you to aggregate all your intel together, it's extremely important. We have to do that. So when you look at budget for security or defense, these are things we don't need to joke with, especially when the country is where we are today. The security agencies really need all the necessary financial and moral support.
Yeah.
That is my own.
I was really worried about this drop, especially when you consider the value of the Naira as at today. But Captain Aibe, let me come back to you, piggyback riding on a lot of the things that Dr. Akinreti had mentioned. And maybe talking about technology. I have personally seen some of the things that DICON has done, and some of the innovations that we've had even here locally. We have had aircraft that have been sold to us here in Nigeria without the appropriate specifications, and we have had our people here have to adapt it to the Nigerian situation. So research and development is very critical. But it also needs a lot of investment.
Funds, yeah.
Captain, can you speak to that?
I totally agree with you on that in terms of research and development and how important this is to the process. In fact, I'm of the opinion that we have a great opportunity here to develop our technical capacity. Because when you look around the world and you look at the more advanced economies, you'd find that a huge leap of economic growth came from adversity. You'd see Europe after World War II, rising from the ruins, and we see a lot of technological growth happening. So we definitely have this. You see that I want to give an example of a company that's I think they're they're definitely in the southwest. I think it's Oyo State, that are armoring vehicles. 20 years ago, who would have ever imagined that we'd be producing these kind of things out of Nigeria? So I think that it's a huge opportunity for us to be able to create industry here, and even in terms of developing human capacity. We have one of the largest private guarding organizations in the world. I mean, in the entire sector. If you go into the estimate or projected figures that we have from the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, we have roughly somewhere around 900,000 registered private guards. That's about the largest anywhere in the world. Now, we do need to develop a lot more capacity within, the armed forces, law enforcement, and even the private sector. And the reason I say that is there's been a convergence between the private sector and the public sector in terms of national security, and this happened with the liberalization of the economy, where you had a lot of the critical infrastructure moving from government into the private sector. So you have like telecoms, like the transport sector and all of that. And who provides security in these sectors? It's private security. So in terms of, just like the doctor talked about security architecture. So in terms of our security architecture, it has to accommodate the reality of our current structures. That's changed drastically. So we need closer working between the private and the public sector, between the law enforcement, military, and even private security in terms of what they can do. And that again brings us back to intelligence, because this is key. It's like a linchpin. It affords you an advantage, because one of the things that we've seen that these criminal organizations, the insurgents, terrorist groups have usually is the surprise factor. They spring out of the bushes, launch an attack, and then they're gone. And one of the things that intelligence aims at doing is taking away that surprise factor, so that we have the advantage. We are the ones that are springing the attack. So I'm not saying that the intelligence advantage is not there, but I'm saying that I believe that we can enlarge that. One of the other ways we can enlarge that, apart from technology or complementing technology, is involving the public sector so much more. We have, 215 million people that have and that have a mind that processes. Now, increasing situational awareness is one of the things that we need to work on, because again, if you go into developed economies, you find that situational awareness is heightened. People know when something is out of order, out of sync. They report it. They know who to report to. They know the kind of response that they'll get. So these are things that we need to do, but we also have to be a bit, I think, gentle on ourselves in a way that we understand that some of these things that are hitting us so fast. We were totally unprepared for them, being hit by so many attacks, so many different organizations, so many different parts of the country.
So basically, crime has evolved much quicker than our response. But Captain, you did say something that piqued my interest, and this is when you talked about some of the organized responses to these challenges that we face, and I want to situate that in our schools. We've had quite a number of attacks on schools, both secondary and tertiary. Thank goodness, at least I have personally have not heard much in primary, and thank God for that. But secondary schools, we had Bunuyadi, almost 50 boys were killed. Then we had the Chibok incident, which we're still dealing with to this day. The ramifications have been huge. We tried to respond with a Safe Schools initiative. We don't know what's going on with that. But one of the things that I noticed, because my children went to an American school, and one of the things I noticed with them is they have a standard protocol. When you hear this, everybody do this, and that. They're always step 1, step 2, step 3. And even when I see the way foreign diplomatic organizations deal with their citizens, everybody seems to know what to do when there's a certain kind of emergency. What about us in Nigeria? Because it seems that we've not developed any kind of protocols for how the citizens should behave in a situation of emergency?
Okay. Okay. That's an interesting observation there. So, I've been working in the maritime space for about over 10 years, and there is a protocol that exists, which is it's a global protocol. It's the International Ship and Port Facility Code. So it has built into the framework, what you call the maritime security levels. There are 3 levels, right? So each port that operates under this framework in our country and in every other country works with this protocol. So if you're to go to a port, say in Lagos, before entry, you're going to see a sign there that will inform you what security level the facility is operating at. So possibly security level 1. So you know things are normal, right? So if you come to work the next day and you see security level 2, you understand it's a heightened security level. So something's going on in the background, people are more vigilant, right? And then the security level 3, where the facility is shut down because there's some imminent attack. Exactly where that's going to happen, the people in the facility don't know. That's left to the authorities. Now, it might surprise you to find out that we actually have a national security level, because this was announced by the National Security Advisor about 4 or 5 years ago. But in terms of its implementation, I haven't seen that. And this was part of the concern that I had when it was launched. I mean, we've engaged with that office a couple of times, trying to see how, we can lend our little experience into, jump-starting some of these things. So there is a system that exists, but in terms of its implementation, that's where we don't see it working. And that's one of the places that we need to be able to implement, so that, like you talk about the Safe School program, if we have a system like that works, that kind of protocol we're talking about, people will be aware when there's a heightened state of insecurity, So all of the protocol, people would know what to do. And this is something that we're going to have to put in place, because from my point of view, we're going to be in this situation for a while, because it's taken a while to get here. And to be, I hear people, all the time saying, this is going to be over by June, July, or this year. And that's fine. But in the reality of the situation, what brings why do security threats happen in the first place? I mean, it's a result of some kind of socioeconomic or political issues,
Some
and
sort of perennial problem in society.
Exactly. And it is going to take a while to solve some of those problems. So, you have the boots on the ground, so they try to stem the tide, because, when you're talking of an insurgency, sometimes what you're trying to do is to prevent them overrunning communities and towns and so on and so forth. So that's basically what the military have been doing. But then you're still left with a whole lot of the socio-economic and political issues that you need to deal with. So this will take time. And then on the flip side of it, you now have a whole lot of people that have discovered new power. They have access to weapons that they didn't have before. They know how to, they have access to training and skills that they didn't have before. And there's a certain level of freedom and esteem that comes with this. So taking that away from some of these people is going to be tough. We've tried several times. The government has put out the option there for people to hand over their weapons and take up an amnesty and all that. So you do see trickles of people come in, but on the whole, you still have a lot of people that are out there. And don't forget that we also have an influx from beyond the borders coming in from outside, which complicates the equation as well. So we're not just dealing with people on the inside, but look, the reality of it is Nigeria has become like a huge hunting ground, where people are able to get these massive, returns on some of their activities, and that's they're ready to risk anything for that.
All right. Thank you very much, Captain. There are still quite a number of questions that I do have to ask you and Dr. Akinreti. We will do that right after this break, so don't go away.
Abuja, let's talk about it on our favorite radio station. Talk to us on 93.7 Citizen FM.
I am the vision, I am the spirit, I am the passion, I am the soul of the continent. I am the Nigerian.
Talk to us on 93.7 Citizen FM.
Welcome back. This is Citizen FM 93.7, and you are listening to the Super Citizen at Sunrise. The time is 8:38, and I've been spending that time talking to Dr. Akinreti and Captain Okai Aigbe. We've been discussing security, the safety of Nigerians, especially the intelligence aspect of it. And intelligence covers quite a number of things. Actionable information is what the captain mentioned to us. We've also talked about research, development, technology, the deployment of that, and how we can harness all of these things to make Nigerians safer. We also talked about protocols. And what are things that the general public need to know if they are going to survive or, manipulate or through the maze of our very complex society today. So quite a number of other things that I do want to talk about, but just to remind our listeners that you can feel free to join the conversation at any time. The lines are open. Just call us on 0903 22 29 797 and 0818 22 22 205, or you could call 0808 22 22 037. You could send messages to us on any of these numbers on WhatsApp, and we'd be very happy to share your views and opinions on how we can keep ourselves safe here in Nigeria moving forward, especially during the political season. All right, Dr. Akinreti, speaking of some of the critical responses that we need to have, especially where intelligence gathering is concerned. How important is, relating with the local community?
It's very important, because even if you are going to use, even if you use drone to also access intelligence, it will also, pinpoint, tell you, this is a particular area.
The hotspots.
In which you need to get, this is a target, and so on and so forth. And so if you really want to even go there, with the ground troops, you also need, that sort of, intelligence to really push it through.
Mm-hmm.
So
let's just take this call. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Good morning.
Okay, please go ahead with your comment. Tell us your name and where you're calling from first.
Okay, my name is Patrick.
Okay, Patrick, calling from?
Luka.
All right, please go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, my kudos to the guests, the students, and the one on phone.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really want to appreciate what the military is doing. They are doing their best. The northeast, northwest, and even north central now, Niger State and Benue State, and Plateau, Kaduna. So they are doing their best. But here is one of the points I want to bring out here. What is the police and the DSS doing? Yes, the military are defending the country with their own, with everything they have. I expect DSS and the police to at least get more intelligence concerning these attackers. For instance, yes, I want to talk about Benue State. We have still continually manslaughter of unidentified headers. We call them unidentified headers. But these villagers have always been crying out. Sometimes they even, according to what I read, sometimes they even tell the police, these are the people that these are the trade they get. They know the need to they speak out that these are the trade they get. So what is the police doing and the DSS to get to the root of those people who always go to Benue State, attack them? Even Kaduna State, they go there, they attack people. What is DSS and police doing to just get that intelligence before these people are attacked? If we don't have to arrest them, arrest them. Secondly, I want to still talk about immigration and custom. For instance, like the guest on the phone was saying that a lot of guns in the hands of people. Okay, this is a job of custom. So they are supposed to know when the gifts are coming in, who is buying it, where are they bringing it from, where are they taking it to, who can they are. These are the things that the customs supposed to know. And immigration, Nigerian immigration tell us how many foreigners are in Nigeria. Can they tell us probably that this is the number of foreigners that are in Nigeria? So we need to get our priorities right when it comes to this security aspect. I think the military is doing enough, but I think police, DSS, and the Nigerian Immigration Service, what's it called? Nigerian Custom. I think they need to do more. These four agencies they need to do more, and including the CBN. We are talking about money. How is this terrorists they big their funds? This money that come in and this money that go out. Where is this money? Like even the kidnappers, this money we collect from people at Samsung. Where are those money going?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very, very critical. Very critical contribution. That it's a holistic approach to all of that. Doctor, let me come back to you.
Well, when I was discussing, I was talking about the media group that I'm part of, which will talk about prayer and support for the armed forces and security agencies. It's across board, and it is instructive that the last caller talked about the police and the DSS. And of course, the immigration service
and the customs, immigration.
The last of it is the Nigerian civil defense. These are other agencies that we also need, to equip, to support, in terms of funds, in terms of moral service, and the give moral support to, because even the intelligence we are talking about, the civil defense can get all this for you. And then pass it. That's why you must have synergy.
Synergy.
Yeah, but across board. And then the police is also very important. But you see, over the years, much attention has also not been given to the police and other agencies. And that is what I think what we are advocating for. That look, yes, let's push all of them at the same time. And so let them be at par with one another. Don't forget, in a democracy, the police are more effective.
At the forefront. Yeah.
They are the forefront. So we need to equip them, and then the DSS, which are, because that's what they call them, Department of State Services. So their priorities are quite well cut out for them. So we must give adequate support to all these agencies so that they can complement one another. It's very, very important.
So, Captain Aibe. You're still with us?
Yes, sir.
All right. Dr. Akinreti just raised a critical question, just writing on that telephone call that we had. And this is that the police, in an ideal situation, is supposed to be at the forefront of all of this, but we do have our armed forces heavily involved. So, what can we do to change that? Because realistically speaking, it seems as if the police has been outgunned by the terrorists. So you need to bring in the heavy hitters, the military. But the police still has a critical part to play in all of this, don't they?
Yeah. Well, you know what? The thing is that, just like you pointed out, we're dealing with a very armed, weaponized threat, isn't it? So
yes, that's right.
So I mean, if you're dealing with insurgent groups that are using, rocket
military-grade weapons, that's right.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that's not to say that the police don't have. They have very specialist units. They have anti-terrorist units, but on the scale at which we've been engaging, it has required, that we, like you said, pull out the big guns, and then we have the military, even the Air Force, trying to take these guys on. So, one of the things that I think I've been advocating for is, some kind of command and control that's able to coordinate these forces, because it's very complicated. These operations are very complicated. From money laundering, you understand, to financing these operations, to recruitment, identifying, possible volunteers in communities, to safe housing, because we've seen this, we've seen the DSS carry out operations, across Lagos and some other states, and picking up, some of these operatives where they've been safe housed. So you have people that are involved in providing safe housing for them, transportation. So there are different roles. There are overlapping roles of the DSS, the police. In fact, he's pointed out, that's the good doctor has pointed out, the NSCDC, in their own role. I mean, it's interesting when you read through the NSCDC Act, because I've had to go through it again. You'd see that one of the major functions of that organization is intelligence production, and that's very key. Yeah, that's very key. Now, one of the things I also wanted to point out that, has been touched on, is intelligence also focuses on one very salient area, and that is morale. Our own morale of our troops and the morale of the people that we're going up against.
That's right.
And the public have a huge part that they can play, but I think that the public hasn't actually been invited into, let's call it the party here. The public hasn't. We haven't actually solicited real support from the public. And I mean, if you go into the past, you see, let's go back into, Second World War. You even more recent times, you see where the public is involved in
morale boosting,
care packages.
Interestingly, Captain, it's interesting that you mentioned this. It's interesting that you mentioned this, because we spoke extensively about this in the earlier part of the program with Dr. Akinreti.
Right.
He talked about morale and why morale is very important. I also mentioned that wars are basically lost and won by breaking the will of the enemy to fight, and that means breaking the morale.
Completely.
Yeah. So how can we get Nigerians more involved in this, to get more excited about what the security forces are doing? In our own little way, Doctor and I shared the little things we do, like even stopping at a checkpoint and thanking our military whenever we are stopped for their service. And I actually said that I've witnessed it's the same effect most of the time. There's always a big smile on the face of these security operatives whenever that is done. So what else can we do as a public to get behind our security forces?
I can tell you for a fact that a lot of guys that are on the front lines feel very isolated, because I've been in touch with quite a number of them, And a couple of them have said to me, listen, I know you're going to the media from time to time. I mean, put out the message, to everyone. Let them understand that sometimes we feel isolated. We feel that, we're just doing this on our own. We're not getting the support that we need from the public. So the media is the first place to start, I would say, because it's that interface between everyone. So we need to be able to change the culture. I mean, if you go to the States and you have an average citizen bumping into a serving or a veteran, you see the attitude, it's like, thank you for your service. So I guess sometimes here it's a bit confusing for the public because of the military rule era, so
that history.
Yeah, so sometimes people are not really sure what their relationship with the military, especially the military and even the police, because sometimes the police have been viewed as an extension of a colonial force, and we saw the NSAS, activity. So there's a lot of work to be done. I've talked about this in 10 years, that the bridges that need to be built. So I would start in the media, but at the same time, I think where it really goes to would be with the authorities on both sides of the divide. The authorities in the military, the police. I mean, the police do have their public, civil, corporations, but you see, it needs to go much further. We need to bring in a lot of creativity, and one of the places that I would look at, because I think that if you go into the entertainment sector, this might sound a bit crazy.
Our movies and music, yes.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly, because it's a place that unifies, and we've seen the power of it even beyond the shores of this country, where, I mean, I saw Burna Boy, performing, and in the midst of the crowd, there was a huge Nigerian flag just waving in the background. So there's a lot of stuff that can be done, concerts, like you said, movies, documentaries. There's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Certainly, Captain. We are running out of time, so I will take that as your final words. Let me quickly come back to Dr. Akinreti for his final words. There is power in entertainment, and I think that the police force understand that, because not too long ago, earlier this year, the Inspector General of Police complained about people using police uniforms in music to ridicule the police, and he says, okay, well, you have to come and ask for permission, and there was this back and forth. But I think if the police take this as feedback, the power of the entertainment industry, and if you can have more content out there that portray our police in a positive light, then I think then we can have that engagement expand. But very quickly, Dr. Akinreti, what are your final words on this? How can we boost morale?
We can boost the morale through support from various angles. Experience of Lagos State is a good template where you have the support, security support group. You have the private sector coming in to support the police in terms of equipment, vehicles, other things like that. That's the funds from the private sector, and it's continually driving, the security in Lagos State. So these are the kind of thing we need to bring into for entertainment. That is why even from our own group of prayer and support for the armed forces and security agencies, we are lashing on that, and that's how we are bringing in, some of these, our creative minds to be part of that group. And then the program that is coming up, by middle of this month. Late this month. It's also bringing those in the creative industries to come along and support these projects. So
and
when inspire them. And what is also critical is
very quickly,
we shouldn't use we shouldn't use our platform to demoralize the security forces in terms of what they do when they wear uniform. You see what they, just cajoling it's not that really good. We have to stop that. We have to, the role where you're going to put the police should be a role that will be salutary. And should be also to give the correct statements to the people, to the public, that yes, our armed forces and security agencies are doing well, and we are proud of them.
I like to say, even if it is one person who's doing well, let us celebrate that person. And I know that certainly there's far more than that in our security forces. So I just want to say thank you to both of you, Dr. Akinrati, retired Captain Okai Aibe. It's been a pleasure speaking to you both on this very important subject matter.
Thank you for having me on the show. My regards to the good doctor as well.
Thank you so much.
And I also want to say thank you to the rest of the crew, to my producer Fred, to the engineer Michelia and his support, to every single person who listened to this program. And let us not forget to support our security forces, because we need them to keep us safe, and they also need our support. So whichever way, just let's say to them, I need you.